Do you remember that week in 2015 when then CEO Howard Schultz encouraged baristas at 12,000 Starbucks locations to write the words "race together" on customers' cups in order to begin discussions about race relations in the US? The experiment did not go well, as almost everyone guessed that it would not. And why should it have gone well? Conversations about hard topics like race relations require mutual respect and some level of relational trust, which are not defining features of going to buy coffee from a national chain of stores. In this segment, I'm going to focus on what is sometimes called civil discourse, what it is, essentially respectful conversations, why it's hard, and some strategies for how to practice civil discourse in the classroom. But first, why civil discourse matters. 3 guesses who said the following back in October of 2017. Quote, "We have seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times, it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates into dehumanization. Too often, we judge other groups by their worst examples, while judging ourselves by our best intentions." End quote. Any guesses? That was President George W. Bush on October 19th, 2017, 9 months into the Trump administration. What he's talking about is civil discourse, a term that has its advantages and disadvantages, so I want to explain quickly why I use it. For the first part, the adjective civil, the benefit is that it succinctly conveys 2 meanings. When we say discourse is civil, we're talking about things in a way that is respectful and also things that are focused on areas of a shared concern for a community, such as when we talk about civil wars. The downside of the adjective civil is its colonial baggage. It's very close to judgments of which cultures are civilized or uncivilized, where the hegemonic superpower imposes its judgment on another culture it seeks to overpower and subsume. Be civil, won't you? For the noun discourse, the benefit is that it can refer to different kinds of communication, from writing to speeches to discussion. I'll be focused on discussion in this segment. The downside is that the word discourse just sounds strange to lots of people. Nevertheless, I'm talking here mostly about respectful conversation about areas of shared concern. My aim is building our capacity to talk respectfully with people about these issues, especially those areas where people are apt to disagree. It's fine if you want to call it civil discussion or civil dialogue or respectful discussion, whatever makes sense to you and the kids you are teaching. I'm just glad you're doing it. Now, there are many reasons why civil discourse is hard to do. Here are 5 of them. First, people just plain look at the world differently. So when you're thinking about areas of shared concern, people sharing that concern have different takes. Take the basic idea of change. Some people tend to believe that change is good for us, that social change, for instance, tends to yield positive results for most everybody, if not absolutely everybody. It's fair to recognize that the US, for instance, has traditionally valued some people's perspectives more than other people's perspectives. So changing that would be a good thing. On the other hand, some people believe that change tends to be negative. Their attitude is more like, things are pretty good the way they are. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's fair to observe that every new technology brings unanticipated negative consequences alongside advances. Nuclear power may just be the energy source that saves us from catastrophic climate change, but nuclear warheads have the destructive capacity to destroy the planet many times over. A second reason that civil discourse is hard. Controversial topics are often avoided. So there's little opportunity for kids especially to practice having reasonable conversations about these areas of shared concern. Think of that drunk uncle at Thanksgiving who spouts off, even though everyone's been encouraged to avoid politics at the dinner table. In this respect, civil discourse is a lot like critical thinking more broadly. If kids don't have the opportunity to practice it in school, they are unlikely to learn how to do it ever. A third reason that civil discourse is hard is that it makes terrible television. So if it happens on TV, almost nobody watches it. There's never been a viral civil discourse video. Trust me, I've tried to make one. So there are few examples for kids outside of school to experience people wrestling with ideas or listening patiently to somebody with another viewpoint, let alone actually changing their mind. Some of the most important modeling we do as classroom teachers is giving students an opportunity to watch somebody think, including the boring parts or false starts or changing your mind. But it matters. Those times when you can say something like, "You guys came at me a little hard for the due date on this paper, but you know what? Lots of you are involved with the X exam or the Y championship or the Z school performance. So I'm going to move the due date back a week." Small examples of compromise matter. So kids today won't grow into the Congress of tomorrow that can't somehow compass compromise as an essential part of the messy, small d, democratic process. Fourth, as we all know too well from US and world politics, we are afraid to get kicked off the team. We're here today because our ancestors survived, and they survived because they learned how to establish cooperative networks. We are wired to commit to teams and tribes. What this means for you most urgently as a classroom teacher is to listen carefully for those kids who might worry they'll be kicked off the team for trying out an idea or sharing what they truly believe about a topic. So you need to make sure your classroom is a place where every kid is honored as a person and that they are encouraged to honor the humanity of everyone else. A fifth reason civil discourse is hard is that facilitating any kind of conversation is the most complex classroom skill to master. Q&A is one thing, but getting kids to really talk with each other is a skill and an art that takes months and years of practice. I hope it goes without saying that it's critical for educators to observe the difference between modeling how to think and indoctrinating what to think. Furthermore, if you're in a school or district obsessing about test scores or finding itself in the crosshairs of groups of parents or legislators believing that they understand more about the complexities of education and adolescent development than professionals like you who have devoted their careers to kids and teaching and learning, it ain't gonna be easy. However, if you believe, as I do, that the only way to a better national discourse is by teaching young people to do it better, I've got 4 suggestions for you to start with. Remember, the fundamental requirement is respect. We're going to differ about things, but I respect you as a human being. A teacher I spoke with recently uses James Baldwin's line, "We can disagree and still love each other, unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist." Respect is a two-way street. So, to get started, here's a strong way to show students you respect their ideas, just as you're hoping they respect yours. Civil discourse suggestion number 1. Solicit feedback from your students on your class. Hear me out. The standard model is teachers assess students. I'm saying, if you want to get as good as you can, as fast as you can at this very difficult job, invite your students to assess you too. They might not be experts in English language arts, but they are experts in how they learn best. Over the course of my 18 years in the high school English classroom, my favorite strategy along these lines, and the one I learned the most from, was this. Every 2 or 3 months, the end of a 10-week marking period is ideal. Allow a few minutes for kids to fill out anonymous 3x5 cards with their candid responses to questions like, what works about this class? What doesn't work? Comments or suggestions. The best feedback I ever got on my teaching, better than any supervisor's report, came from their answers. When I made good changes based on what they wrote, they told me they were being heard. Community building activities and discussion prompts also help to establish and reinforce mutual respect, and gradually trust builds over the course of the semester or year. For building trust on top of respect, start small. Build up the level of risk gradually. Here are some prompts you can use. So first are some low to no risk prompts, and then some questions that invite some risk from students, and then discussion launchers that really encourage class members to get to know each other at a deeper level. You'll notice that most of these have nothing to do with the prescribed English curriculum, unless you believe, as I do, that 50% of your curriculum walks in the door with your students. My former colleague Emily Stile shared that gem with me, and I share it every chance I get. The more you all know about each other and the texts of your own lives, the more deeply you'll be able to connect with, explore, and apply the texts you study together. Some of these prompts I have adapted from the articles cited at the bottom of the screen. Some have been suggested by teachers like you that I've worked with in recent years. Share some good news. How was your weekend? What's your dream vacation? What season best describes you and why? What condiment could you not do without? What was a favorite book of yours when you were little? Invite some risk. What's a personal or academic hope you have this year? Use your gestures to draw a picture or show how you feel right now. We'll make 2 guesses. Sum up your day so far in 3 words or less. What do you like about the end of the school year? If you could devote the next 3 months to learning something, what would it be? Share your 6-word memoir. And then prompts that encourage risk. Share a recent win in your life. What's something you tried that made you want to give up? Tell about a person who challenged you. What did you learn from them? Share a quote or song lyric that's meaningful to you and explain why. Think of one thing you have added or removed from your life to improve yourself physically, emotionally, or spiritually. To practice lively discussions, choose high-interest topics. Write a clear, discussable question that you, the teacher, are also interested in. Consider using a short text, like a passage of a novel or a brief article or poem that confines the parameters of your discussion. In class, develop the discussion ground rules together. Take 5 minutes to write some thoughts, or sketch, or map, or doodle in response to that question alongside your students before you pair, share, and or discuss with the full group. Note, doing some tasks with students reinforces not only the value of the assignment, but the image of a more egalitarian classroom. Develop discussion routines that support more interaction between and among students. Again, most classroom interactions that pass as discussion, in my experience, are really a series of questions by teachers and answers by students, which is fine, but that's not how discussion happens in the wild. The following models are adapted from a book called They Say, I Say. Frame your comments as a response to something that's already been said. So like, I really like the point that Aaron made earlier when he said, but I agree because I like your point, Nadia, that, but I think that, those Sheila and Ryan seem to be at odds about, they may not be all that far apart. To change the subject, indicate explicitly that you are doing so. So far, we've been talking about, but isn't the real issue here? I'd like to change the subject to one that hasn't already been addressed. And be more explicit even than you would be in writing. So, in other words, what I'm trying to get at here is, my point is, my point, though, is not but this distinction is important for several reasons. Got it? So those prompts can help. Big picture. How this works, my theory of action, if you will. A learning environment that honors student voice and offers opportunities for students to have some input in their education has a better chance at engaging students as citizens of the classroom, invested in a shared enterprise. Once the common purpose is established, teachers can build relational trust with small, low to no risk activities as opportunities to practice civil discourse before tackling more controversial topics. Short term, we support students in engaging meaningfully with different viewpoints. Long term, we achieve a more reasonable national discourse.